That night, the phone rang at exactly 11:47, and Maya Carter's life collapsed in a single breath. Her best friend whispered the truth. Her husband Ethan Hale was hand in hand with supermodel Ava Laurent in a luxury hotel. 8 years of marriage, countless sacrifices, and shared dreams shattered in one confession. But just when Maya thought she had lost everything, an unthinkable secret struck. She was pregnant, not with one, but with 3 children. From being labeled ordinary, Maya had to rise, raise her children alone, and rebuild her life from the ashes. 5 years later, on the lavish wedding night of Ethan and Ava, Maya stepped into the glittering ballroom with her 3 little daughters. Would his entire world collapse right then and there? The phone rang at 11:47 p.m., tearing through the heavy silence of the bedroom. Maya Carter jolted awake, her hand trembling as she reached for the phone on the nightstand. The quiet house suddenly felt suffocating, pressing down so hard that even her breath grew ragged. On the other end, there was no rushed greeting, only a long silence, broken by weary breaths. Maya's heart clenched. That silence carried a warning, the kind her intuition had whispered many times before, the kind she stubbornly pushed away. When Sarah's voice finally came, fragile and hesitant, Maya almost already knew what she was about to hear. The words fell slowly, coldly, heavy with betrayal. Ethan, the man she had loved for a decade, had been caught in another woman's arms. And not just any woman, but Ava Laurent, the dazzling supermodel the whole world followed. Maya sat frozen, her eyes drifting to the empty space beside her. The cold pillow where Ethan should have been now stood as a cruel testament to the nights he hadn't come home. In her mind, fragments of memory stacked up, the late returns with excuses of urgent meetings, the sudden business trips, the unfamiliar perfume lingering on his collars. Piece by piece, they formed a picture she had refused to face. Now the raw truth lay bare, leaving no room for denial. The phone slipped from her hand onto the bed. The bedroom, once built with love and effort, now felt like a gilded cage holding her captive with shame. The wedding photos on the wall seemed to mock her, the expensive furniture turning into evidence of betrayal. She sat motionless for hours, until the sound of the front door broke the void. Ethan came home near 3 in the morning. She heard the key turn, the careful footsteps on the wooden floor, the soft click of the door closing like a thief in his own house. He thought she was asleep, and she, in the dark, listened, part of her wanting to confront him, part of her still weakly hoping it was all a misunderstanding. Dawn spilled through the curtains, bathing the room in a pale light. On the kitchen counter lay a hastily scribbled note in Ethan's handwriting. Early meeting. The same empty excuse, the same hollow words. Maya brewed coffee, her hands shaking so badly she nearly spilled the dark liquid. The sharp scent filled the kitchen but could not drown out the stench of betrayal clinging to her thoughts. That entire day, she moved like someone hypnotized, cleaning, scrubbing, arranging every drawer, every shelf as if wiping down surfaces could wash away the filth seeping into her marriage. But the more she cleaned, the clearer the image became. Ethan's hand pressed against another woman's back, his bright smile reserved for someone who wasn't his wife. When night fell again, the house sank back into suffocating silence. Ethan returned, carrying the unfamiliar perfume and his usual polite smile. Maya was waiting in the kitchen, her face hidden behind careful makeup, her hair styled to perfection, not to entice, but to shield herself. She wanted to preserve one last shred of dignity before facing the truth. When their eyes met, Maya saw it all. The flicker of unease, the evasive glance, the heavy breath. She didn't need a confession to know. The betrayal was etched in every gesture, every blink. And in that moment, she understood. 8 years of marriage could shatter in a single second. All right then, my dear listener, if you're finding this story compelling, drop a comment with 1 or write, "I'm still here," to keep listening. The kitchen light was still on, but its warm glow suddenly felt cold. Maya sat upright, her hand gripping an empty cup like a fragile anchor. Ethan walked in, set his briefcase on the floor, and in that moment of silence, they both knew what was about to come could no longer be avoided. He opened his mouth, ready to offer his usual greeting, but Maya's gaze stopped the words dead. It was no longer the look of a wife waiting for her husband, but the eyes of a judge preparing to deliver a final verdict. And Ethan, with all the cleverness and charm that had once carried him in the world, suddenly became clumsy, cornered like a man with nowhere to run. Maya didn't need to ask questions. His silence, the twitch at his lips, the heavy sigh, they were all answers. What Sarah had told her the night before was confirmed without a single confession. In one heartbeat, 8 years of marriage shattered like glass, impossible to piece back together. A dull ache rose inside her, but Maya refused to let tears fall. She would not grant him the privilege of seeing her break. The kitchen became a silent battlefield. On one side, a woman exhausted by pain. On the other, a man who had lost everything yet lacked the courage to admit it. Ethan moved, intending to step closer, but Maya pulled back. The distance between them was more than a few steps, it was a chasm. He ran a hand through his hair, that old habit whenever he was unsettled. She saw the torment in his eyes, but instead of comfort, it only stoked her anger. Regret couldn't erase the months of betrayal. Memories crashed back in a flood. The long nights of waiting, the cold dinners, the hidden texts. Maya had once believed love could weather any storm, that her patience would be rewarded. Now that faith lay in shards, sharp and bleeding. Ethan's voice softened, almost begging through his eyes. But Maya turned away. Inside her, something had died. What remained was only the will to survive this collapse. The next morning, Maya didn't cry. She gathered papers, searched for the lawyer's number Sarah had given her. It felt as if she were dismantling her life piece by piece, locking each fragment into a box. Every bank statement, every contract, every deed was another cut severing their bond. News of Ethan and Ava surfaced just days later. Photos of them strolling together, smiles on display as if no marriage had ever existed. Each picture stung like a slap, but also fueled her resolve. She had nothing left to cling to, and because of that, nothing left to lose. At night, the big house grew unbearably quiet. Maya lay on the couch, staring up at the ceiling. This house, once a home, was now a museum of broken promises. Every frame, every object whispered of a love that had died. She knew she couldn't stay forever. One day, she would leave and start again, even if she didn't yet know where. Inside her, a war raged. Part of her longed to ask why, to place blame, to hold on to whatever scraps remained. But another part stronger pushed her to cut clean, to never again witness him in another woman's arms. When the door shut behind Ethan that morning, Maya knew it wasn't just another day at work. It was the end. And though it hurt, something new flickered inside her. Freedom, fragile but real, opening the way to a new chapter. And before we continue with the rest of the story, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Oh, and drop a comment below to let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear it. In the days after Ethan left, Maya lived like a shadow. She woke in the vast, silent house, passed by a dining room overflowing with empty chairs, and at night curled up on the sofa instead of the once warm bed. Time no longer flowed normally. Each morning bled into exhaustion. Each evening ended with a hollow ache in her chest. Then her body began to send signals. At first it was only fatigue, a fleeting wave of nausea in the mornings. Maya thought it was stress, the endless sleepless nights spent over divorce papers and the relentless tabloids flashing stories of Ethan and Ava. But when it persisted, a hidden fear crept into her mind. Could it be? One rainy afternoon she bought a pregnancy test, hiding it in a cloth bag as if it were a dangerous secret. Back home, Maya sat for hours in the bathroom, the small box lying on cold tile. When she finally dared to open it and look, 2 pink lines appeared sharp, undeniable like borders slicing the past from the future. Pregnant. Maya sank onto the floor, neither crying nor smiling, only a choking stillness. In their marriage, she and Ethan had tried for years to have a child and failed. Countless infertility appointments, costly treatments, hopes that flared and died. They had poured their youth into waiting for this, and yet only when the marriage collapsed did the miracle arrive. The next day, Maya went to the clinic. Dr. Martinez, who had stood by her through all the failed treatments, smiled when the ultrasound revealed tiny glowing dots on the screen. But that smile quickly gave way to solemnity. Maya held her breath as the explanation came. Not 1, not 2, but 3. 3 heartbeats, pounding inside her. The sound echoed in the quiet room, like sacred music. 3 lives, 3 fragile miracles she had never dared to dream of. Trembling, Maya clutched the ultrasound image. 3 faint circles lined up together. Her heart, shattered by betrayal, was suddenly filled with a sensation both overwhelming and holy. On the drive home, Maya wept, not just from fear of triple the responsibility, but from the strange joy that seeped into her grief. Ethan had chosen another path, but she was no longer alone. These 3 children would be her family, her reason to rise again. That night, Maya sat by the window, holding the ultrasound picture. Outside, the city lights burned, where Ethan and Ava might be laughing at some party. But here, in the silent house, she carried a secret larger than any scandal. 3 lives he didn't know existed. The question circled in her mind. Should she tell him? Logic said he had the right to know. But the memory of his cold eyes that day in the kitchen still held her back. The man who had called his wife ordinary in a text to his mistress did not deserve to know about these extraordinary children. Maya leaned her forehead against the glass, whispering a promise to herself. She would raise them with everything she had, shield them from the pain of abandonment, give them a childhood whole even without a father, and above all, she would never let them feel ordinary. In that moment, Maya understood. From the ashes of her marriage, a new family was taking root. She didn't need Ethan. She didn't need anyone's validation. All she needed were those 3 tiny heartbeats, pounding strong, proof she still had worth, still had hope, still had a future to move toward. As Maya looked at the ultrasound picture one last time before sleep, she knew her life had veered onto a path no one could have predicted. And then a thought sparked. These children were not only her chance to begin again, but living proof of everything Ethan had lost forever. That summer, the city felt more suffocating than ever. Posters flaunting Ethan and Ava's images were everywhere. At charity galas, on glossy magazine covers, in photos of the perfect couple strolling under the lights. Each accidental glimpse was like a blade twisting into Maya's chest, and she knew she could no longer live in a place drowning in memories and whispers. One morning, after staring at the folded divorce papers on the table, Maya packed her things. Only what truly belonged to her remained. A few boxes of books, some handmade trinkets, and the old mixer, the only object in that house that had ever given her peace. She sold the sprawling home, closed the final chapter with Ethan, and drove toward suburban roads she had never seen before. Milford appeared like a slice cut from another world. Quiet streets, wooden houses draped in bougainvillea, and a calmness that made Maya breathe deeper after months of suffocation. There, she found a small house with a backyard wide enough for sunny afternoons and the laughter of children someday, when hers would run across it. Maya began thinking about how to provide for herself and the 3 lives growing inside her. Interior design, once her profession, felt unreachable. It belonged to the world Ethan dominated, with its lavish parties and powerful clients. The only thing she still longed to touch was flour, vanilla, and the serene rhythm of shaping loaves by hand. The little town had no real bakery. The only shop had closed years ago. Maya saw her chance to turn a forgotten passion into a new career. She used the modest settlement from the divorce to rent the old storefront, scrubbed every dusty window, and transformed the decayed space into a bakery she named Fresh Dawn. In the beginning, Maya did everything herself. She arrived at dawn, her body heavy with pregnancy, to fire up the ovens and knead the dough. Every loaf of bread, every tray of cookies felt like a declaration. She still had worth. She could still create sweetness in a world that had once turned bitter on her. Curious townsfolk began to stop by. Some came just to try, but soon they were drawn in by the humble, heartfelt flavors. Before long, the little bakery became the town's gathering spot. High school students stopped in after class for pastries. Young mothers lingered while waiting for fresh bread, and old men found their childhood in the taste of warm waffles. Maya, her belly growing rounder, stood behind the counter each day, smiling as customers returned. Inside her were 3 growing heartbeats, and outside was a community opening its arms. She had never thought she could belong anywhere again after everything collapsed, but Milford gave her that a true home, a real beginning. Still, in the quiet of late nights, doubts pressed in. Could she really raise 3 children alone? Could this small bakery provide for a family? Fear circled her, but each morning, as she watched the ovens glow and the faces of her customers light up, she knew she was on the right path. She was no longer the abandoned woman in a cold kitchen, but a mother preparing a whole world for the children about to be born. One late autumn afternoon, Maya stood in the shop looking out the window. In her hands was a fresh loaf, its scent filling the air. Her belly was round, each tiny kick making her smile. Outside, golden leaves spun in the wind. In that moment, Maya understood she hadn't just left a marriage, she had stepped into a rebirth. But she didn't yet know that in only a few months, her greatest trial awaited in the delivery room where those 3 fragile heartbeats would enter the world and change everything forever. Are you still with me, dear listener? Take a moment to relax, maybe grab a glass of water, and keep following this gripping story. Comment 1 if you find it moving, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Winter came to Milford earlier than expected. The sky turned gray, winds cut across narrow streets, and Maya knew the moment she had both feared and awaited was near. Her body felt unbearably heavy, every step like carrying the weight of the world. Yet inside her, 3 tiny lives kept moving, as if urging her, "We're ready." One morning, just after sliding the last tray of bread into the oven, a sharp pain struck relentless, like crashing waves. Maya gripped the counter, sweat breaking out across her skin. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman who had been with the bakery since day one, rushed to her side. One look at Maya's eyes was enough. The time had come. The ambulance tore through fog-shrouded roads, sirens splitting the silence. Maya lay on the stretcher, clutching the worn ultrasound photo she always carried in her purse. The image of those 3 faint circles, 3 fragile hearts, was her only anchor against the storm of fear. The operating room blazed with light. The air was thick with antiseptic, machines beeping non-stop. The anesthetic numbed her legs, but her mind stayed awake. On the surgeon's face, focus mixed with tension. This wasn't a routine birth. It was a battle to bring 3 fragile lives safely into the world. The scalpel touched her skin. Maya felt her body split in 2. Her heartbeat thundered. Her ears roared. Then it came the first cry, sharp and thin, weak but alive. The first baby. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Before they dried, a second cry followed, louder, stronger, as if declaring they had arrived to survive. And then, in a fleeting pause between silence and chaos, came the third cry, trembling yet steady, like a small flame just sparked. 3 cries, 3 souls, 3 miracles. She couldn't hold them right away. Nurses rushed each baby to the incubators, checking every breath, every beat, so tiny, so fragile. But each rise and fall of their chests was a victory. The doctor leaned close, his voice warm. "They're strong. They just need some special care for a while." In recovery, Maya lay drained, eyes closed, her hands still imagining the feel of their skin. Beside her, Mrs. Patterson held her hand, whispering comfort. When at last Maya was wheeled into the NICU, she gazed through the incubator glass. 3 little angels wrapped in blankets, wisps of hair, flushed pink skin, eyes tightly shut. She named them in the sacred quiet of the hospital. Ella, the strong eldest, Clara, the calm middle child, and Sophia, the youngest, whose eyes seemed to know more than her years. 3 names, 3 hopes. 3 pieces of Maya's heart. The days that followed blurred into a harsh routine. She learned to change diapers through incubator portholes, to feed with tiny tubes, to track every blinking number on the monitors. Night after night, she sat for hours in the NICU, whispering stories of a future she promised to build for them. Her body ached, her mind burned with exhaustion, but each faint, raspy breath gave her strength. Those 3 lives were the reason she could endure anything. She had once lost everything: a marriage, an identity, her faith. But now, in the glow of 3 incubators, she had found it all again in the form of 3 fragile angels. And yet, as the babies grew stronger, Maya faced the greatest question of all. Could she raise them alone, or was it time for the truth about their father to finally come to light? The day Maya carried her 3 daughters out of the hospital, Milford burst into brilliant sunshine after weeks of drizzle. Ella, Clara, and Sophia, still so tiny in their pink blankets, lay quietly in 3 car seats carefully secured in the car. Maya sat in the back, eyes fixed on her babies, her heart trembling with joy and worry. This wasn't just the day they came home. It was the beginning of an entirely new life. Mrs. Patterson had prepared everything. Maya's little house had been transformed into a triplet base camp. 3 cribs lined up in the bedroom, a changing table stacked with diapers, shelves filled with formula, burp cloths, and soft toys. In the living room, a corner had been turned into a small workspace so Maya could watch over the babies while sketching ideas for the bakery. The first weeks were a whirlwind of exhaustion. Every 2 hours, one baby would cry, triggering the others. Maya barely slept, her eyes ringed with shadows, her body drained. At times, she sat in the rocking chair cradling all 3 in her arms, tears spilling both from fatigue and overwhelming love. In those moments, Mrs. Patterson would quietly step in, bringing a warm cup of tea and gentle words. "You're not alone." As time passed, Maya found her rhythm. She recorded every feeding, every nap, every tiny change. Ella was quick and restless, always the first to stir. Clara was calm, wide-eyed, observing everything. Sophia, the smallest, clung to her mother the most, as if afraid of being left behind. Watching their personalities slowly emerge, Maya felt a new strength flowing through her veins. When the babies turned 3 months, Maya returned to the bakery. Mrs. Patterson had kept Fresh Dawn alive during her hospital stay, but everyone was waiting for its founder to return. Maya brought the triplets each day, placing them in 3 little cribs behind the counter. Customers delighted in buying pastries while watching the 3 angels sleep peacefully, sometimes laughing when a sudden wail cut through the sweet scent of waffles. News of the triplet mom quickly spread across town. People from neighboring areas came not only to buy bread, but to witness Maya's resilience. Local papers began featuring Fresh Dawn as a story of triumph over adversity, and each time Maya saw the line stretching outside her shop, she whispered to her daughters, "We did it." The work was relentless, but her love for her children gave her strength. In the mornings, she rose early to fire up the ovens while Mrs. Patterson cared for the babies. In the afternoons, when the crowd thinned, Maya held each child, telling them stories about the bakery and the little miracles flour, sugar, and love could create. At night, with all 3 asleep in her arms, she jotted down recipes and dreamed of expansion, her heart brimming with hope. Sometimes, in rare quiet moments, Maya thought of Ethan. His face alongside Ava's still appeared in the papers, smiling, flawless in a tuxedo. But instead of pain, she felt only distance. That man had left her, chosen another world. And she, through her 3 children, had built a world far better. One autumn afternoon, as golden light bathed the small street, Maya stood in the bakery, watching the long line of customers waiting patiently. Behind her, Ella giggled. Clara played intently with a plastic spoon, and Sophia slept soundly in her crib. Maya suddenly realized this was her family, her kingdom, her happiness, what she once thought was lost forever. But Maya didn't yet know that as her bakery's fame began to spread beyond Milford, the past would return unexpectedly, forcing her to face the question she had never dared to answer. Did Ethan have the right to know about the 3 children? 5 years had passed since the day Maya left the city with a shattered heart. Fresh Dawn was no longer just a small bakery on a Milford corner. It had grown into a brand with branches across the state. Articles calling Maya Carter, the woman who disappeared and returned like a flame, appeared more and more. Yet her greatest pride wasn't in the giant checks or franchise contracts, but in her 3 daughters growing each day, brave Ella, gentle Clara, and clever, mischievous Sophia. Every morning, Maya walked them to school, their smiles like medicine healing every old wound. At night, the little house overflowed with laughter, the smell of fresh bread, and innocent stories. Ethan Hale no longer existed in her mind. The man who once destroyed her life was now nothing more than a faint shadow in the past, until the invitation arrived. A thick, cream-colored envelope, written in elegant calligraphy. Ethan Hale and Ava Laurent cordially invite. Maya froze, her heart skipping a beat. The wedding. At last, after all these years, he and that woman were making it official. She could throw it in the trash, pretend she'd never seen it. But something inside Maya urged otherwise. For 5 years, everyone in their old social circle believed she had vanished, that she was just the abandoned woman, ordinary, forgettable. But in reality, she had built an empire, raised 3 extraordinary children, and lived a life richer than any glittering gala. Maya decided she would go, not for revenge, but to exist, to let Ethan see exactly what he had lost. The wedding day came, and the Metropolitan Hotel glowed like a palace. Guests were top executives, renowned models, the elite of high society. Amid the dazzling gowns and sparkling champagne glasses, Maya walked in. She wore a midnight blue dress that embraced every curve, her hair swept up with elegance, and on her face the smile of a woman who knew her worth. Beside her, Ella, Clara, and Sophia wore matching pale pink dresses, each holding one of her hands, their eyes shining bright. The room slowly fell silent as they appeared. Familiar faces turned, stunned to see the woman who had once vanished, now standing more radiant than ever. Whispers rippled, eyes followed. And then, across the crowd, Ethan turned. He looked older, his face lined with wrinkles absent from Maya's memories. But when their eyes met, time froze. Ethan went still. His gaze flicked to the three little girls beside Maya, dark hair, familiar smiles, steady eyes so much like him it was undeniable. In a single instant, Maya saw Ethan's entire world collapse right there. Ava, radiant in her wedding gown, was still laughing and chatting with guests, unaware of the storm that had just struck. Ethan stood frozen, his eyes locked onto the children, the truth he could no longer deny. Maya held her head high and walked slowly across the room. She needed no words, no accusations. The truth was plain for all to see. The woman once dismissed as ordinary had become extraordinary, and those three beautiful little girls were the living proof of everything he had thrown away. As she passed, Maya paused briefly, just long enough for her gaze to meet Ethan's cool, but not bitter. It was not resentment anymore, only freedom. Then she moved on, blending into the crowd, leaving Ethan rooted in place in the middle of the glittering wedding he no longer controlled. That wedding night ended, but its echo lingered in Maya's mind. Not the dazzling lights, not Ethan's stunned expression, but the bright laughter of her three daughters as they returned to their little home in Milford. In that moment, Maya realized her greatest victory wasn't in facing the past. It was in daring to build a future, despite all the wreckage. Maya's story reminds us that even from the cruelest betrayal, a woman can still find her miracle. Pain may break a heart, but it can also open the door to a strength we never knew we had. Ella, Clara, and Sophia were living proof that even in the deepest darkness, light can still be lit. But one question remains. When Ethan comes, and he surely will, should Maya allow him a place in the lives of their three children? Or should she close that door forever, protecting the world she fought so hard to build? This is only the beginning of a storm-filled journey. If you want to know what Maya will choose, leave your thoughts below. Do you think she should forgive, or continue walking her own path? Share this video with friends because perhaps Maya's story will touch their hearts too. And don't forget to follow the channel, so you won't miss the next chapter where the truth can no longer be hidden.